Secondary research, systematic research. Systematic review refers to a rigorous process of searching, appraising, and summarizing existing information on a selected topic. Reviews are most commonly focused on the effectiveness of interventions, but may also address the accuracy of diagnostic tools or identification of prognostic factors. The keyword, systematic, differentiates this process from the classic review article. Traditional narrative literature reviews have been and continue to be a good source of information, particularly on the background of a specific topic. The traditional review, however, does not include a detailed description of the methods and criteria used to select and evaluate articles that are included. Authors may approach their topics with a bias from their clinical perspective that may not represent the breadth of information. Procedures for conducting a systematic review, on the other hand, are formulated to be inclusive of the body of research evidence at the time the review is undertaken. A meta-analysis combines the studies using a quantitative index to develop a single overall estimate of the intervention effect. The terms systematic review and meta-analysis are often used interchangeably, but they do have different objectives. While both present a critical appraisal of the studies, only the meta-analysis includes a statistical synthesis of data. The protocol for a systematic review specifies all aspects of the review process and is analogous to the protocol written for a primary research study. A systematic review begins with a well-defined, circumscribed question or purpose statement. The question will serve as the foundation for locating relevant references for the review. When asking a question about intervention, the researcher must delineate the treatment, outcome measures, and population characteristics. A question about diagnostic tools must specify the test, reference standard, and outcomes. Questions about prognosis include the prognostic factors and outcomes of interest. The process of the literature search is well documented with a systematic review. A detailed account of the search terms used and databases search is included in the methods. In addition, inclusion and exclusion criteria is also identified, as well as how the individual studies were evaluated. It is quite typical for a systematic review and meta-analysis to include a PRISMA flowchart. It is a visual account of all of the literature that was found to be related to the topic. The flowchart provides a sequence of the process of including or excluding an article. Oftentimes, results of literature research start very large and gradually narrow as researchers move through the review process. One way to evaluate randomized controlled trials is to use the PEDRO rating scale. PEDRO is an acronym for Physiotherapy Evidence Database. It is a free database of randomized controlled trials, systematic reviews, and practice guidelines for evidence-based physical therapy. You will visit the database in class. The scale has 11 items, the first of which is not scored, making the highest possible rating a 10. The higher the score, the better. The content of the scale includes items such as subject allocation to groups, blinding, number of dropouts, and statistical analysis methodology. The researcher can use the scale to evaluate each randomized controlled trial. Every yes is scored with a 1, and every no is scored with a 0. Depending on your topic, you may also find the rating on the website. Be aware that there are a few other ways to evaluate randomized controlled trials that can be found in your book and are similar to PEDRO. This is an example of a study result. On the left are the articles included in the review. Their individual results are plotted across the chart, and a summary of the results is found at the bottom. It is not always necessary to provide this level of detail in the final product. Oftentimes, just the PEDRO score is included in a column in a literature review table. You will also visit the Cochrane database in class. It hosts systematic reviews. The format of a systematic review is typical: introduction, methods, results, and discussion. Cochrane reviews are systematically detailed and rather long in length. When you are reviewing a systematic review of meta-analysis, there are a few questions that you should be asking yourself when trying to decide if the study pertains to your clinical question. These are the questions you would ask yourself about the internal validity of a systematic review or meta-analysis. Basically, how valid and reliable were the procedures and methodologies? Read each question carefully. The degree to which studies in a systematic review are similar is based on the heterogeneity of the treatment effect across the studies. This heterogeneity can be due to two main reasons. Either it is a random effect due to chance differences between studies, or study samples may be drawn from truly different populations. The statistic used most often to test heterogeneity is chi-square. A non-significant test indicates there is a common treatment effect across studies, and therefore the observed differences are what would be expected by chance. A large chi-square value indicates that a common treatment effect is unlikely. What you need to take away from this slide is that there is a statistical test to determine whether or not the studies can be pooled together for further statistical analysis or not. Oftentimes, vote counting is used to summarize the results of a systematic review. For example, in a systematic review of an intervention, the total number of studies included in the analysis is compared with how many support or refute the intervention. Systematic reviews are printed in journals, much like other research projects. They are scientific by design. They do not take into account patient perspectives. That is something that clinical practice guidelines do. That module will follow. In lecture this week, you will discuss some principles related to systematic reviews. Using a checklist, you will also appraise a review.